Hey everybody, this today is February the 9th, 2023. I wanted to show you something I observed yesterday in this hive. You can see the numbers are kind of starting to build. They started with some brood here the first part of January, and they had mostly some honey left up here. Well, they have consumed most of that honey, and they have moved up with brood up here now. And these are just single frames, so they have brood on both sides. They seem to have a little more going on this side than the other side. Here's the queen this morning. See if that'll focus. It's not clearing up very much, but anyway, there she is. Um, our maples are starting to bloom here. It's early. Um, and yesterday morning, I tilted this back in the sunlight where I could see, and I couldn't see a lot of pollen. But yesterday, and it's still not going to clear up. Sorry about that. But they brought in quite a bit of pollen and stored it around the edges here like they normally do. Um, so a lot of pollen coming in. It was like 70 yesterday. It's going to be in the 70s today. It's kind of early to mid February. Things are coming a little faster here this year. I see a lot of maples popping out. But something I observed yesterday, I had put some pollen patty up here because we had some cold, rainy weather, and they were making all this brood. So I wanted to make sure they had um, what they needed there to eat. And I put the Canadian. It has the Canadian rocket fuel in it, and so bees are looking good. They're growing. Another thing I did was I put a frame of honey down here, and this was a full frame. And they are. I wanted to see if they would take it out and move it, and they are, as you can see, taking it out, and they're moving it up here, all around the edge here. Looks like nectar coming in, and it's where they're moving that honey up. And they, I'm sure, are getting some nectar with the maples blooming. I see it in some of my other hives. I'm not feeding them, and they have what looks like open nectar. But when I put that pollen patty up here, when we had our class, beginner beekeeping class, um, January the 28th, I carried it to the class, and it was warm in there, and the bees got really active, and we saw a couple hive beetles in here. And I saw one up here in that patty, and I saw some crawling at the bottom. And with the bees opening up this honey, um, there's some debris at the bottom, and I had put some sugar also up here in some newspaper. Well, the most part of that sugar, they dragged it out, and so debris is starting to collect at the bottom, and that's always a problem for hive beetles. They will get down in debris in the bottom of the colony and lay eggs, and then they'll start to hatch out, and then you'll just have the bottom of your colony crawling with larvae. But you can see right here, they kept the pollen patty up there for a while, and they were working on it. But then in the last couple of days, they just started pulling it out and dragging it. And you can see some piece of paper here from the patty, and the paper down here from the patty, and some of the patty that they pulled out of that top and cleaned that top up. Well, yesterday I noticed out here on the where I have them sitting, hive beetle larvae. So the beetles had laid some eggs in there, and it was starting to hatch out. And the bees just went ahead and pulled it out of the way and cleaned it up from up there next to their brood and where they're laying and working. And it's I just wondered why all of a sudden they were starting to just pull that patty out, like get rid of it. And I think it was because that larva was hatching out. So another interesting, I've got to open this up this evening, and I want to get all that cleaned out and get that stuff cleaned up, and so we can stop that propagating those hive beetles. But all in all, this hive is doing really well. They're looking good and growing. Um, I looked yesterday, and a good part of the brood is in the hatched out stage right now in the back, and so they're laying it back. But the population is building, and they're growing. And looked at a lot of our hives yesterday, and they're looking good. They with this warm weather, they're starting to bring in. Some of them are stronger than others, but they're laying. And I had to add some, actually put some honey frames on some of them where I had some dead outs and they had a lot of honey stored. And I moved that honey to those hives that are surviving because they're growing and they're going to need that food if we get any cool weather where they can't get out, and they'll have plenty of food. And I had some that are bringing in, I was storing a lot of pollen, new pollen, and on each side of the brood they had a lot of pollen, so they're looking good. Here's all the debris that I have small screens here in the bottom, so the bees are tossing out some of the debris. There's a young bee and so you see how they're cleaning things up here as best they can. Yesterday they were down on this honey late last night, and I could put my hand up here and this was very warm. You can feel the warmth coming off of it now, but I keep this blanket over it so it holds that heat in. And they were working late last night pulling that honey out and moving it up. As soon as they clean that up, I'll give them another one, so make sure they got plenty of food in here rather than putting a liquid feed up here on the top. I'm just using up some excess honey to feed them. So all in all, I'm happy with what they're doing. You can even look right here and see where they stored some pollen in these cells. A little nectar in there, pollen. They've put quite a bit of nectar right there. See the change in that color. But it's interesting to see them. But it's too much space right there, so they were putting this comb on here to correct that bee space, and they fill it, and you can see from the back side when they put stuff in there. It's all very interesting. Enjoy watching them a lot. But anyway, this is Mark with Sourwood Branch Bee Farm. Appreciate everybody watching, and keep tuning in. We'll keep making more. Thanks for all your comments, and go on our YouTube channel. We'll post these videos over there, and we're trying to work to get more info out to help our new students and help them to have a good beekeeping year this year. So some of them are just starting, some of them are trying it again for the second year, and excited for everybody and help them get going. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one.